I'm going to call the meeting to order. First, let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. So let's please rise.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands,
Okay, can I have the roll call vote to call to order, please?
Dr. Gase?
Here.
Dr. Hoyda? Here. Dr. McBride? Mr. Perez?
Here.
Mr. Widman?
Here.
Then I need first a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Vote, please.
I'm sorry, who moved?
Gase.
Thank you. Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Okay, our first action item under number 3.01 is to elect a new president of the Tiffin City School Board for the 2021 year. Open the floor then at this point to nominations.
I'll nominate Dr. Hoyda.
Any other nominations? Okay, I'll call the nominations closed. We have two people. Do we just ask for votes, Ms. Perry, or do we go around?
Actually, first, we need a motion and a second and a vote to close the nominations.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to close.
We need a second though, right?
Yes.
On each candidate?
No, we're
Just
closing nominations right now. We're not voting for the candidate yet.
Okay. And so Mr. Woodman voted to move to close, and so I'll second that motion.
All right, Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? All right. And now I will call the roll again, and this time state who you wish to vote for. Dr. Gase?
Dr. Hoyda.
Dr. Hoyda?
Dr. Hoyda.
Dr. McBride? Mr. Perez?
Me.
Mr. Widman?
Dr. Hoyda.
Okay, next item on the agenda is then elect a vice president for the Tiffin City School Board.
Mr. Perez, if we could back up, I will administer the oath of
okay.
office to the newly elected president. According to the vote, that would be Dr. Hoyda, and then he will assume the chair.
Okay, then I can get out of the way then. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Hoyda, if you would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as President of the Board of Education of the Tiffin City School District, Seneca County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereinafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified? Thank you. Congratulations.
That's when we picture.
Ready? 302 is the second order of business is to elect a new vice president for the Tiffin City Board of Education for 2021. Any nominations, please?
I nominate Dr. Gase.
Any other nominations? I need a motion to close the nominations.
I'll move to close.
Second? I'll second it. Karen, could you call the roll for the election of a new vice president?
This will be the roll to close the
Okay,
nominations.
sorry, close the nominations. Okay. Close the nominations.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Mr. Perez?
Okay, now we'll ask for the roll call to elect a new vice president, please.
Dr. Gase?
Gase.
Dr. Hoyda? Dr. McBride? Mr. Perez?
Gase.
Mr. Widman?
Gase.
And Dr. Gase, if you would stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as Vice President of the Board of Education of the Tiffin City School District, Seneca County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereinafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified? Thank you. Congratulations.
Okay, item 4 is the committee assignments for the calendar year 2021. First is business advisory. Dr. Gates, would you like that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyone would like to be the second in that? That meets on, that meets on Thursdays, correct? Thursday morning. And then our finance, Victor? Yep. And then that's on Tuesday nights, correct, Sharon?
Tuesday, the third Tuesday of each month at 4 o'clock, unless the chair would like to change that.
Yeah. Anyone else want to be second on that one that can make it on Tuesdays at 4? Myself, I think 100%. District leadership. And anybody else would like to? Would that? Support services.
I can do that one if you need.
Okay, have you do that and then I'll help with that. But that's open to everyone, of course. We meet the Friday before the board meeting, second Friday of the month, and we usually meet about 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. Right, so Chris, do you want to be on that night? And legislative liaison, Perez again. Levy committee. Victor. Okay. That sound fine to everyone? Okay, we'll go to item 5. That's to appoint to the Vanguard Sentinel Joint Vocational School District Board of Education. Board of Education recommends that we appoint Chris to serve as the member for a 3-year term beginning January 1st of 2021, ending December 31st of 2023. Need a motion for that?
So moved.
And Sharon, please call the roll.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes. Item 6 is building assignments. Anyone who wants to pick first? Megan, you get first choice. Middle school, okay. Victor? Okay, so we'll give Victor the middle school. Megan, you'd like the high school? Then next year we'll switch. Well, that's true. Okay, Lincoln Pre-K. Anyone want that?
I'll take that.
Gaze?
Yeah.
Chris, what would you like to select?
I'll take Washington.
Okay. So it looks like Trout loses out. Oh, no.
Student. I think we're the
No, there's
student.
2 left, I'm sorry.
I know
Give me that
in the
student
past,
too.
one of our students,
We used
our
to put the
students,
students with 2021. No students are here tonight, correct? I'll take,
I'll be going to Nova with Reach. So
Okay, you take Nova
I'll
too?
take Nova too.
I'll take two. Got that, Sharon? Lincoln, Dr. Gase, Washington, Mr. Woodman, Kraut, myself, Noble, Dr. Gase, Tiffin Middle School, Victor, Columbia High School, Dr. McCray. Item 7 is the list of our meeting dates. If there's any, these are the scheduled meeting dates. Of course, we can always add other meetings if needed. Have them the fourth Tuesday of each month, starting at 6 p.m. Exception of December, which is the third Tuesday at 6 p.m. And we'll continue to have them here at the Tiffin Middle School cafeteria, if that's fine with everyone. 6 p.m. still work well for everyone?
I like 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, I do have a conflict with the October board meeting, but I just
Okay.
so it's, that you know, that's all.
So could we do that either earlier later in that week or in the previous week?
Previous week's good,
Okay.
and
Okay.
the
Previous week would be-
following week is good too. I can go either be 1 week before, 1 week after is good.
Let's just move it to the 19th.
Thank you.
October, you said?
Yep. Exactly. So that'll be the change, and then any special meetings we announce. Need a motion for the meeting dates in 2021, noting that we're changing the October meeting to the third Tuesday, which would be the 19th.
So moved.
Karen, would you call the roll?
Mr. Woodman?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes. Item 8 is to approve our annual membership in the OSBA, which includes the January 2021 through December 2021, and the electronic subscription to the OSBA briefcase and school management news, which is in item 7. Need a motion for that?
I'll second it.
Mrs. Perry, call the roll, please.
Dr. McBride? Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Mr. Woodman?
Abstain.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes. Item number 9 is to select the board delegate to the 2021 fall conference. Hopefully it'll be in person this year instead of virtual. Did they say yet? No? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
It is, if I can add, because I was on the committee meeting on Friday. As of today, they're planning on having in-person
Good.
conference. So
And in-
that could change,
in
but
November?
yeah,
Second, yeah, I think it's the second.
I cannot confirm the date. I
He
don't.
runs around at night.
Yeah, something like that.
So
So
if there's
you
anything you want, I'm on the planning committee.
So if you wouldn't mind, I was supposed to be the delegate. Well, I was, but I didn't, so I'll do it again if
Okay.
if you don't mind.
And how about the alternate delegate to the conference? Dr. McBride? Yeah. Okay, for the board delegate, Sharon, we have Dr. Gase. Sharon, would you call the roll? Oh, I'm sorry. Motion to,
I made the motion.
okay, second? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Woodman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes. Item 10, I've already got us ahead of it. We had selected Dr. McBride as our board alternate delegate to the OSBA Fall Conference. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Perry, please call the roll.
Mr. Woodman?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Dr. Hoyda?
Yes. Item 11 is to approve the standing authorization for the calendar year 2021. Karen, do you want to go over that?
Yeah, I can. There is nothing different here from what we've done in years past. The first one is advance on taxes collected. I used this in February and July before the March and August tax settlements so that, as the taxpayers are remitting their payments for their property taxes, then I can ask for those monies that have been collected as an advance. And then when the settlement is made, they just deduct the advances from the final payment. But it does take a resolution for me to do that. Payment of bills, that eliminates the need for the board to approve every individual bill. All of the monthly payments are presented to the Finance Committee and exhibited in the board agendas. So there is a final approval, just not individual approval. Then in now certificates, this is authorization for me to review and approve all then and now certificates per the Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D. These certificates allow the payment of an invoice that, in the absence of a purchase order that's been pre-approved, that's only if the amount that is owed on the invoice is unencumbered at the time of the obligation, and it is limited by the Ohio Revised Code to the current fiscal year and $3,000 per purchase. The next one is employment of temporary personnel. This allows the superintendent to employ personnel and accept resignations as he determines necessary to cover emergency situations before board approval can be sought, which would be done at the next board meeting. Appointment of purchasing agent. This authorizes the Director of Operations, Mr. Daniel, to serve as the purchasing agent for the school district and sign all purchase orders. Those are also signed by me as well to certify that funds are available. State and federal programs. This just agrees that we will act as fiscal agent for all state and federal programs and grants for fiscal year 2021, and actually that would be for fiscal year 2022 as well, since that will start on July 1st before we meet again to organize next year. The board service fund, this establishes or renews the board service fund for this calendar year at $12,000, which is the maximum allowed by the Ohio Revised Code. That would be for expenses that are incurred by more board members in fulfilling their duties at meetings. Not these meetings, but professional development or other meetings. And that $12,000 allows an average of $200 per member per month. However, in calendar year 2020, the actual amount that was spent was only $763. That was due to canceled events during COVID. So I think typically with the school boards conference and other professional development meetings, we might spend a total of $5,000 out of that fund. Certificate of available sources determines annual appropriation limits by fund. That basically is a certificate estimating how much revenue we will have, and then we cannot appropriate more than that. And it is submitted by me to the Budget Commission to be certified. This just waives approval of that by the Board of Education each time. And then, of course, legal counsel is the last one, and that would be the same legal counsel that we currently have, Bricker and Eckler. They usually handle labor and negotiations matters. Frund, Fries, and Arnold, they handle insurance claims. Squire, Patton, Boggs will handle debts and levies. Scott, Scriven, Bricker and Ecker also handles those items. Scott Scriven we use for special education services, and Supance and Howard for property and local matters.
And do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Perry, call the roll, please.
Mr. Widman?
Any
Yes.
discussion?
Dr. McBride?
If
I'm
I
sorry.
raise a question for Ms. Perry?
Yep.
On the legal counsel, I think I brought this up last year, have we ever called out for proposals from other law firms in terms of, could somebody else submit proposals? I know there's multiple firms, but in terms of the hourly, or is there any chance we can get a different deal than what we get in terms of what we're paying per rate on them?
Right. I don't have that information right now, but this authorizes that these firms are available for the administration or the board to use.
Okay, I have no further
So
question.
we could solicit, correct?
I don't think we've done that in years, but that's something I think we should consider at some point.
We changed.
You guys did, right?
Bond counsel not too long ago. I think Rickard Eckler are relatively new to us,
Mhm.
meaning within the last 5 years. Would that be right?
Yes.
Um,
And
course.
most of them, it depends on which of their attorneys or partners are handling the matters that you need them to review. They all have different hourly rates within their own organization.
I think so, because I think we're at the point we'd have to do it before we like hire them for the year. We'd have to do it earlier than that. I think so, because we do it with our auditors, and most practices you want to rotate them once in a while just to make sure that there are multiple firms out there, so.
although, Victor, I think that you would be able to bring in a new legal firm if it was
Right.
brought to the board and approved. I don't think we would have to wait until next year to bring them on if we wanted.
Correct.
Yeah. We don't have to wait till
Yeah,
next
right.
January.
It just says these are designated as official, right?
Well, yeah, so I'm not looking to bring anybody specific. I just want us to, we
Yeah.
should really, shop it, I think.
Yeah.
And when we go to the conference, there's
Maybe
multiple
it'd be nice
firms.
to know how much we do spend on legal fees.
Mhm.
A lot.
Yeah, I know. It'd be nice to see that number.
Any further discussion?
No, thank you, sir.
Mrs. Perry, would you call the roll?
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes. Item 12, the agent for all federal and state and privately funded projects during the calendar year 2021. And then basically we're appointing the superintendent, interim superintendent, to act as our agent for those projects during the calendar year 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Just another formality, correct, Chair?
Otherwise, you'd have to, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Board president, yeah.
Correct. The superintendent or interim will have the final authorization on all federal grants and state grants that are submitted to ODE.
Mrs. Perry, call the roll.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Mr. Perez? Dr. Hoyda?
Yes. Item 13, there are alternative tax budget information. Sharon has presented us with this. Any questions about that for Sharon? Sharon, is there anything you want to explain on it? We've all heard it.
Yeah, I basically took the same approach that we do every year. As you go through there, you basically have 4 different areas, and these are the areas that are collecting taxes. So the County Budget Commission needs to know that you need those taxes, those rates set and collected. That gives them the authority to do that, and how you plan to spend those taxes. The general fund, that is the exact same information that's on the 5-year forecast that was approved back in November. Bond retirement, that's according to our debt retirement schedules. Permanent improvement is based on what's actually been spent last year and what we project to spend this year. permanent improvement revenues total about $900,000 annually, we spend $240,000 per year on buses, band equipment, and property tax collection fees. And then in 2020, we spent about an additional $560,000, and that was for several things such as new mowers, the outdoor digital sign at Columbian, baseball scoreboards, the athletic track and protector, the pay it forward garage renovations, which a lot of that came from donations, which be included in there as well as an offset. In 2021, we estimate the additional expenses to be about $780,000. That's for parking lot maintenance, the high school fire escape, the high school library and study hall renovations, window repair at Noble, and the tennis courts. So these are estimates. Basically, we're setting this money aside for these projects in hopes that we can complete them. In 2022, additional expenditures are estimated to total about $670,000. That's for gymnasium seating, asbestos removal, Columbian and bus garage renovations, and auditorium flooring. So with all of that in there, at the end of fiscal year 2022, which is what the tax budget goes through, which will be the next fiscal year starting July 1st this year, the estimated unencumbered fund balance becomes $872,000. That's about 1 year of property tax revenue, which has typically been our goal, to keep at least that much in reserve in the permanent improvement fund. And remember, permanent improvements are anything that has a useful life of 5 years or more. The classroom facilities fund is the $500,000 maintenance levy for the middle school that was required when this was built as part of the debt, the bond issue. OFCC requires that you run that $500,000 maintenance levy. That brings in about $190,000 from taxes and state equalization payments. Annual expenditures are about $30,000 for tax collection and automation fees, and then other non-routine expenditures in 2020 totaled about $73,000. That included work on the heating system, chiller, boilers, security film on the windows, bleacher wheels, and removal of the spire. In 2021, we estimate that to total about $240,000. That could be, and actually, if it's not done by June 30th, then it would be this summer. Is that correct, Mr. Daniel? Okay, and that would be for foundation work and for HVAC work. We think that that amount is going to be a little short for all of that, but in 2022, for illustration, we put in the $1.2 million for cafetorium expansion, and with that, the estimated unencumbered balance at the end of 2022 is just $5,700. So we put as much as we can in there in order to use those taxes that are collected. That $5,700 is left with about 1.5 fiscal years of collection remaining, because when the debt for the bond issue is matured, then that $500,000 maintenance levy will expire and no longer be collected. So we would still have 1.5 years of collections, about $300,000 to collect after 2022. Those are really the only things that I wanted to point out. As I said, everything else is very status quo as far as the other schedules go. Schedule 3, that's everything that, all the funds that we have that do not collect taxes. Basically, the intention is that whatever is collected from fundraisers, I guess that would be the biggest example, is that whatever's collected is spent, that money is not meant to be reserved. And then Schedule 4 shows all of the debt that we have outstanding. The middle school, principal amount outstanding at the beginning of the next budget year is $2,025,000. The energy conservation bonds, which is the House Bill 264, loan, that we did several lighting, and Scotty, I don't know if there was anything else. Okay. That was mostly for the lighting. That's $385,000 left. That matures in 2028. And then we also have unvoted certificates of participation, which was for the windows at the high school. That also expires in 2028. That has about $545,000 left. I think that's it. Any questions on that? After we submit this, then the Budget Commission will certify our revenue and set tax rates so that these expenditures can be made.
Sharon, do you have an idea what the average debt load is for a district our size?
Oh, no, I don't, Dr. Gates, but I can try to find that out.
I'd just be curious, because I remember, a couple years ago, we got sort of dinged because we didn't have enough debt. We didn't get as much from the state anticipatory from the
Right.
facilities commission because we didn't have as much debt. And like, well, it's like, once again, you're penalized, so to speak, for being fiscally responsible.
Mm-hmm.
For the facilities commission, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I just was curious as to what the average debt is.
Any other questions for Sharon for that? So then I'll entertain a motion for item 13.
So moved.
Sharon, please call the roll.
Mr. Woodman?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Hoyda?
Yes. Item 14, board discussion. Anything you'd like to discuss?
I'd like to talk a little bit about the operating levy that we're going to be voting on at our next meeting. I just want to get some clarifications as I'm trying to determine what I believe could be the best course. Sharon, one of my questions is about the with the property tax, and we're looking at the material that was provided, and we're looking at a $100,000 home would be $242 a year. At the, am I correct so far? That was the, is it the 6.9 that we talked about?
I believe so.
Okay.
I do not have that information with me
All
tonight.
right, I apologize. I should have told you I was going to ask you a question. So my question on that is, for people that get the homestead reduction, would that, so they would pay less?
Correct.
Okay. So that doesn't include if you have the homestead extension. Okay. I wanted to clarify that because a lot of people in our district get the homestead exemption, and so they would see a reduction.
And that kicks in, homestead kicks in, 55?
Um,
I'm trying to,
I would have to defer, but many people get the homestead exemption. Some people don't, but many people do get it.
I'm not sure if the homestead will apply because a few years ago, the legislators made a change
Okay.
that not all of the rollbacks would apply to new levies.
All right.
So they
So-
apply to anything that was still in existence.
So then
not to
consider
new
this a
levies.
question for our next meeting, if we can
Yep.
get a clarification on
I can do
how
that.
the homestead works.
Yep.
Okay.
because then what you said is previous levies would, the homestead may apply, but the new levy, homestead may not apply.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of,
That's important.
And the conversations I've been having are more support of a property tax than an income tax. And then I just want to make sure that that I'm telling people correctly as I take a look at at the $100,000 home, you're going to pay $242, which would be the same as if I had a household income of $24,200. So if my income was more than $24,200, a household income in a $100,000 home, I would pay more if I was at a 1% property tax.
1% income tax.
Yes, sorry. And then, well, a lot of people don't live in a home that's worth $100,000. Some of them live in a home that's less than that. And so if I take half of that, a $50,000 home, the household income would be $12,000. And I guess so what I'm trying to share tonight, and of course we'll have more discussion on this at our next meeting, is that I believe at this point in time that the property tax is going to be more cost effective for more people in our community. I think that the biggest advantage of the income tax is that it grows with us. As people's income grows, we receive more income. And it could also decline, but that's a big advantage for schools that have that income tax. I just wish we weren't discussing coming out of the gate with a 1%. Maybe if we could have said a 0.5%, then maybe it could have been more easily sold. But I'm just concerned that we would have I think we'll have an easier time trying to pass a property as opposed to a income. I just wanted to throw my thoughts out tonight as we get ready for our meeting next 2 weeks. So.
Well, Mr. Woodman, the committee through Mr. Grubbs has put out surveys. I think one to, and I mentioned this to staff, and then I think now one to parents. And I think the numbers they have are a little bit different. When we did these discussions before, the 6.9 or the 6.7, I can't remember what it is now, levy was comparable to a 1%. So that's how that came out. We weren't going to go 0.5 and then shortchange ourselves. We were looking for something that was roughly equivalent, especially with the earned income. But then looking at the comparisons, because I think what people wanted us to do was seriously consider an income tax. And when we got the numbers, I think in the poll that went out, and I was trying to see if I could still access it to forward it to you, it had, I think, the numbers that you said for the property tax. But then with the earned income tax, it was looking, and I can't remember, was it like 1% of 40,000 was like $400. So if you had two parents working in the house, you could be paying a lot more than the $200. So most of the polls were coming back, and I think Mr. Grubbs is waiting to review that. We're coming out way in favor of the property versus that. When people can see the two, and that plus the 1 year delay on it. And I think that's what we wanted to do. Is everyone always asks, everyone else has an income tax, why don't we? But then too, it's looking as to what that load would really be. I mean, we want to give you the numbers so that you know what's equivalence. So yeah, the property tax would be more diffuse, which is why you'd only see the 200 per 100,000. But then I also have residents that are going to be, hey, you're right, and my house is worth less than 100,000. Okay, but I also have people who are going to say my house is worth 200,000, so I'm going to pay this. And I think they need to see the two numbers. They know what they make at home. They know what their income is. 1% is pretty easy to figure out, I think, on your income. So,
and then that's just, I wanted to share my perspective is I'm in support at this point in time of the property. I guess what do you support, Victor?
I think at first, I'd like seeing the numbers and the data, and you guys, I'd like to hear from you guys because you guys we're all different experiences here. For a working family, that 1% is going to be hard, to tell you the truth. And I know we're trying to be fair because I understand the retirees and we're trying to be fair to everyone. But then we always have to remember too, it's in terms of you asked the question, our debt load versus other districts. We're actually pretty low, but we're also very low in what we spend per pupil. So, and I think we saw that in all the other things. We do a lot for our kids for what we have. And I think, to me, I think at this point, I'm going to be leaning exactly with you with the property tax. I think that's the fairer one at this point based on our, our amounts. I think the other thing too is, Sharon, how many years until this comes off, the middle school, the 2 years?
2023 is the last collection year. So that's the last year that the taxpayers would have to pay those bills.
Right, so, at some point, we'll look at it replacing that, and so it's going to be hard, and I think we're still trying to gauge input from the other partners, because we have to look at it in terms of economic development, what it would mean to the area, the additional 1%, and we have to look at all those factors. We're just a part of the cog here, so that's why I think I'd be going, but I'd be interested in hearing from you guys.
Sharon, do the income taxes, if you have an income tax, does it have to be renewed at a similar time frame as the levies?
No, I believe that it can be a continuing period of time that would not have to be renewed, or it can be any number of years from 1 to 5 if you want to make it not permanent.
Yeah, I'd just be curious to see if you could crunch the numbers and assume an inflation rate of a certain amount and just find out where that property tax becomes less than, and it declines sufficiently that you got to ask the taxpayer for more money again, as opposed to what would happen if you had an inflation-proof income tax. It'd be at some point in time. I mean, the bottom line is you're going to you always want the same amount of money, and somebody's paying the bill. Either the landlord's passing on to your rent, or you're going to get it from someplace, right?
Right. So Sharon, I guess to follow up on that, if I may.
Yeah.
Because when we talked about the income tax, we approved an amount, and then they figure out what the comparable income tax would be to raise that amount. So I think what we passed the resolution was basically renewing, so we wouldn't have to renew it again. It was ongoing. But his question, and correct me if I'm wrong, we know at some point inflation will catch up, but we don't know what funding is going to be. That's not adjusted by, we're still going to get the same amount, correct, in income tax? Unless, or if our base increases incredibly, we have development.
The income tax percentage stays the same. The amount that you raise
Will go up,
will either increase or
decrease if the economy goes bad.
Yeah, during times of high unemployment, such as the COVID era, income taxes actually went down for several districts in the area, but those are recovering.
Right. And if I remember watching the city council meeting last week or the week, and I could be wrong on this, but I think they mentioned that at the beginning of the year, the city was their income tax revenue was pretty high, but the rest of the year wasn't so rosy. So that's the other concern, is income tax isn't foolproof. But if we have a ton of development, we can make up with it in terms of people, but we're also not, the vice versa is we're giving up the development. If we do have a bunch of commercial development, we're giving that base up that would diffuse the individual share, the property owners. We wouldn't be able to tap into that. We would be stuck with income. And I think some of the questions people had is, well, if we do the income tax, then people who work here or, maybe at some of our institutions would now have to pay in. No, because they would still be taxed on their home school district, correct, Sharon? So,
Right.
so that wouldn't address that issue either.
Correct.
They're working chicken
Right.
with their home school district. Right now, I've got a couple of employees who work for me, but they're not taking to the school. The home district has an income. So we withhold that every week, every basis for them with the state.
Right.
And then the state sends it back to their district, even though they work in 50 cities, so we would collect it. Also, how would and with the income tax, as our area ages and we get more people retiring, and that drops off too. Correct?
Correct.
Correct. The earned income tax would not tax retirement income.
So we lose that too.
But you would assume that there's people starting jobs,
Exactly.
just as many as
No, I think for board discussion too is I kind of, there's like there's some loose ends that I want to clear up. We did meet the search committee for the superintendent with Miss Morgan, and what she would like to do is meet with the entire board, and we discussed meeting earlier in our regular board meeting this coming one up, like we did last time with the finances work session, because she really needs to meet with the entire board to gather what the board wants in the brochure, what we're expecting in terms of that. We've told her that you guys are interested in the timeline for when you want everything else and the hiring dates and everything. And she said she'll have that, but she needs the board feedback.
Could we move our, still come at 6, but then have a regular meeting start at 7 or 7:15? Is that possible?
Yeah.
How does that work with, because it's hard for me to get here
Oh, okay.
by 6.
The only thing is, I think we anticipated you will have to stay a little later, and we anticipated, or I anticipated that.
Maybe 5:30.
Yeah, because I anticipated at that point that we have the levy issue too, which is going to be big that night in terms
Right.
of, because
Did Miss Morgan say how much time she would need with us?
half hour to hour.
We should try to set, the starting time of the regular meeting. Now, the work session with her is considered a meeting.
Right.
So we can either make it part of the regular meeting and just set the agenda timeline,
You can do it that way.
accordingly, or we can actually call that a special meeting either before or after and convene and then, restart the regular meeting. So
And I can make
a lot of options.
Did we go to executive session to do that with Miss Morgan?
No, she says,
Right here?
Yeah.
right here.
So do you want to do that at 5:30?
Do work session at 5:30? I could do that.
With everyone?
Right, because you could do two things. You could either do that as work session 5:30 to 6, or you can make the regular meeting start at 6:30 and put it on the agenda for that, correct? But we're starting at 6, or 5:30, I mean. So whichever way you
Right,
want to do it.
yeah. Yeah, you could just start a regular meeting at
And then put that number 1.
5:30. I mean, I know we just resolved to start at 6, but we would just have to put a notice out.
So our next meeting would be in 2 weeks from tonight.
We could change the time to 5:30.
Can you make that back today? Yeah.
And then you'll finalize that at the agenda meeting. Yes.
Anything else?
I would suggest maybe we go into an executive session to talk about the employment of a public employee. Yeah.
Anything else under discussion? We have a request for executive session.
To consider the appointment of a public employee.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second? Second? I'm sorry. Mrs. Perry, call the roll, please.
Dr. Gase, did you second?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. McBride? Mr. Perez?
No.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes. There'll be no,
I don't know.
there'll be no
I don't think there'll be any
action
action.
after the meeting?
Nope.
After the executive
Just,
session, correct?
nope.
We'll go to executive session. The next meeting will be January 26th at 5:30 PM here in the